I want to start by looking at the land before Boger, the original developer of Lake Thomas Point, purchased it. So if you look here, William and Jane Collier were the owners. There were 3 parcels that they owned that were sold to Boger. So the first one, if you look here in red, that is basically all out into the lake, this whole section here. And notice the shape of it because you'll see that on our plat as well. That is the lake bottom, all of this. Okay, so that was 1 parcel. Then the next parcel, so then you'll see above this red shape was the one we just looked at, which was the lake bottom. And then this parcel here is the land. And then this other section here, it looks like a little square. That'll be the last, oops, sorry, the last parcel that I'll scroll down to right here. Here's that square. So that is before, and you can see the orange grove here. That was what the land looked like for our community. Okay, now I've jumped here to our recorded plat for our neighborhood. See this shape? This encompasses all 3 parcels that the Colliers sold to Boger. So if you see here, the lake bottom out into Lake Thomas is in here, and then all of our properties and our common areas are in here. And here's the view. If you go to the property appraiser website and type in Lake Thomas, you'll see this bold green area is the whole shape of our neighborhood. However, now when you click on the lake section, it shows Internal Improvement Trust, care of DEP. This used to say Lake Thomas Point POA, and then as I've shown in a previous video, if you click on our pond, it says the same thing. It's no longer owned by Lake Thomas Point POA, and even our roads. Ever since Alan Wozniak signed that quitclaim deed to the Internal Improvement Trust of DEP. Now, this is something to file in the back of your mind that will come into play sometime during this journey together. Back in 1856, the land that we currently live on in Lake Thomas Point was sold to a gentleman named Diston. His last name was Diston, 1856. This is the survey. Section 12 is where we live, right here in Section 12. And as you can see, Lake Thomas was dry over in our section. There was no lake there. That's going to come into play and be very important. So, and here's another drawing of the survey. We have Section 12. Here is a recording, the legal description. Here's Hamilton Diston. He actually purchased 4 million acres of Florida land in 1881. And here is the very, very old document of the legal description of the land that was sold from the state of Florida to Diston. The Board of County Commissioners signed off on our plat. Here you can see July 26, 2005. They approved this. It was recorded, and that is the plat that we all purchased our community with this verification. So there's many, many more records. Boger goes through all the legal entities, gets his conditional approval by the county to start development of the community, start selling land. He also has to go through SWIFMUD and that Southwest Florida Water Management System, and in conjunction with the DEP, the state. And somewhere along those lines, which doesn't make any sense to me, but he was told that the community dock, which was in our plans, was going to require a state submerged land lease. Now, my guess is he just wanted to get in and out of this community, make his money and go. That's my guess, because I don't understand why he wouldn't have some pushback on why a submerged land lease would be required when our plat shows that we own out into the lake. And no one else, to my knowledge, on Lake Thomas has to lease the use of the water rights. If you do some research yourself, you'll see there's many docks on Lake Thomas. There's other communities, planned unit communities that I don't believe have a lease to use the water. But it doesn't seem like there was any pushback. I mean, the lease was only, I think, $500 a year at the time. So it was probably one of those things like, fine, I'll check the box, move on. But I don't understand why a lease was ever required. I think it was a mistake. And so the original submerged land lease, so that we were allowed to have a community dock, ran for 10 years. I believe it was amended once the Taylor Morrison took over our community, the next builder, and the developer was out of here. But we'll jump to, so we had an environmental resource permit, or ERP, through SWIFMUD, in addition to the state submerged land lease for the dock. Those 2 things were government entities we have to deal with. In 2015, we received notice from SWIFMUD that we were in violation of our environmental resource permit, that many of the lots here that are along the lake had made impacts to area beyond their property line, did not belong to them, and damaged protected wetlands. So I'm going to show you some of the images. So here is lots 14, 15 through 21. And here you can see the property ends, I don't know if you could see my little mouse here, their property lines end at this line. Then you're going to see some of these diagonal green lines. That is the area that was impacted, that was encroached on. So these lots went beyond their lot line onto tract B, which is common area, and they damaged it. Whether they added fill dirt, took down trees, cut grass, and basically used the land as if their property line was extended further. In addition to that, this dotted line that goes inward from their property lines, that is what the Swift Mud considers an upland buffer. So that is also supposed to be a protected area, this upland buffer that isn't supposed to be damaged on their own property line. It's about 25 feet, I believe, all the way down. So here's just a visual of these areas that were damaged. Okay. This was a big deal. SwiftMud sent us notices where we were going to be fined or needed to be restored, and we had to get into compliance. There was no choice in the matter. In addition to the impacts to the wetlands that needed to be remedied, SwiftMud also had issues with the docks that were constructed on Tract B. So this was sent September 3rd, 2015, and on page 2, it lists the docks. It says that permits are needed, and something that is very mind-blowing to me is that all of these docks were built when without a county permit. First of all, there was no county construction permits, which are required to be pulled to build a dock. Not one of them has a Pasco County permit. Not one dock has an ARB approval on file. I've done records requests, nothing can be produced, there isn't anything. And it makes sense because if you look at our documents, our governing documents for Lake Thomas Point, the word dock is not written in our documents, not one time. So the ARB wouldn't be able to approve something that our documents do not allow for. So I don't know what the answer is to that, how this happened. However, that is the situation we're in, that we have governing documents that do not allow for docks to be built on common area. There's no approval by government entities, and it's not on, the docks are on Tract B. So SwiftMud at the time, their way to remedy this was to send a link, I guess, to every lot owner that's adjacent to those docks, and they had to self-certify the docks that they were under a certain, I think it was 1,000 square feet. They had to do some type of self-certification, and they went through the process and and got some type of a certificate that I think had an expiration date on it of a couple of years, and then our community, the HOA, finally, after the mitigation was done for the damaged lands, all the docks were self-certified, the HOA got a notice that the community was back in compliance. I believe that notice finally came about in 2017. So now we can fast forward to more recently. In April of 2019, the Mackins sent a request to SwiftMud to change the ground cover to sand in the area of Tract B behind their property line. And SwiftMud responds that they need the property owner to contact them, which is how it should be. They need permission from the property owner rather than someone else wanting to alter lands they don't own. So then it went back to the board, and the board denied this request to damage the wetlands further. It was told that it would require restoration or mitigation, and the board voted no. So right after that denial, in August of 2019, the Mackins sent out a letter to the community requesting that we all collectively deed over the Tract B land, that's common area, to the lake lot owners. This is where a lot of the strife in our community began. It's a very complex matter, and the board did entertain the idea. They spoke with the HOA attorney, they spoke with the government entities, and they entertained the idea. There were board members that were lake lot owners, so they were in full support of it. They were asked to recuse themselves since they would benefit from this matter, essentially being gifted land. And while I don't believe any votes transpired by these board members, they were very engaged in speaking, reaching out to government entities, and contacting the community. And here is a letter that board member Lisa Lucky emailed and put in mailboxes of every community member, and it just outlines all the reasons why she thinks that this land should be given to the lake lot owners. Some of the information in here is not accurate and has a stance almost as if it's legal opinion. But yes, so board member Lisa Lucky was in full support of giving herself and the others land, sent this to the community. We did, as a board, get a letter emailed from the attorney, Adrienne Vining, at SwiftMud, and she outlines all the reasons why this, I'll just read you the last sentence. It says, above all of the above considerations lead district staff to direct the HOA to not convey Tract B to the individual adjacent lot owners. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. So this was from the attorney at Swiftmud, just considering the history of the damage being done in the neighborhood and just the legal complexity of it. Our community, if we go back and look, the developer got approval to create our HOA, our community, with it set in place this way. So our drainage system all works together. It all flow. This is our plat. Like there's all these little lines that show where water flow is supposed to go, drainage easements, and to just gift some homeowners common land that is part of our drainage system, it's part of our neighborhood. It doesn't make any sense. And so ultimately, after probably way too much money and time and resources with legal weighing in and government entity conversations and board meetings, just everything was consumed by this one topic when our community has lots of things that need attention. But after quite a while of entertaining this idea, it finally went to a vote of the board, and the board voted no to put it to rest. We're not changing the community from the way it was developed, the way we all agreed when we moved in here. We all agreed to the same guidelines, the same plat. So finally was put to a vote. The board voted no, and here we are.
After the no vote, there is an attempt to recall the entire board except for Lisa Lucky. Although the recall was not successful, board members decided not to run again and the board composition changed. The Mackins took legal action, sending the HOA an alternative dispute demand requesting the land. After an unsuccessful mediation, they recalled me from the board.
All right, stick with me. This all comes together. So in 2019, our attorney at the time reaches out to the state DEP attorney there to inquire about these other docks and possibly changing ownership. And that's where this gets to be discovered that, oh, wait, all these other docks on Tract B are not allowed. They aren't under lease. They weren't, they actually go against the lease stipulations. And so I'm going to read you the last paragraph here. It says, also, I noted in researching this question that the aforementioned quitclaim deed that is referenced in the current lease instrument also appears to purport to convey portions of the submerged bottom of Lake Thomas to the association. That is potentially problematic as it clouds title to the submerged lands, which the state considers to be state-owned. The association could remedy that issue by quit claiming back to the board the submerged lands lying below the ordinary high water line of Lake Thomas. So this is the first time that it's brought to their attention where they supposedly realize that, oh, wait a minute, your current plat and quit claim deed show that you own the lake bottom, but we think we own the lake bottom. So if you notice the language here, it's not an official demand. We've gotten official demands from the government entities before. This says you could quit claim deed it back to us. I urge you to do your own records request because you will never find any official notices from DEP requiring our HOA to quit claim deed them land. There are no corrective action notices. I even point blank asked our board president, Alan Wozniak, when they were discussing reviewing our quitclaim deed at the December meeting, I said, you haven't received one corrective action notice with a deadline, with a threat from the entities. If we don't do it, you haven't received anything. And he admits, no, they have not.
That was at the request of our attorney, but I'm asking if you have received a corrective action notice like we did when we were out of compliance in 2015. Did you receive anything with deadlines saying we need you to do this?
No, because from what I was told is that they won't do that until they get that signed over back to them.
So 2 years have gone by with no lease. We've not received a bill or a warning letter from them of any kind. And we've gotten to where we are today because of our attorney being the pursuer in getting something done. Is that
our state submerged land lease for the community dock expired May 31st of 2021. DEP has not sent any official corrective action notices to the HOA since then. There has been emails that have gone back and forth from the HOA attorney and DEP regarding the lease that hasn't renewed, but nothing official. So it has been floated around with language similar to that letter I just showed you, where it says you could quit claim deed the lands to us to uncloud the title. And then there were conversations regarding the unpermitted docks that are also on Tract B. There were a couple of remedies. So if we quit claim deeded the land to them, then we would now have to go under lease because technically they would officially own that lake bottom. And then those docks could either go under lease with the community dock, which would be much higher price. At that point, I'm assuming that the HOA would specifically assess all the other dock owners for their portion of the lease. Another option was to create an easement agreement where each of those adjacent lots to the docks would have some type of an easement agreement. And once that is in place, then they could deal directly with DEP, whether they needed their own state submerged land lease or not. And that's where the surveys came into play, because the DEP said that they need surveys of all of those unpermitted docks. They need to know the measurements of them, the placement of them, any damage that was done in placing them in there, and they wanted these surveys. I have always argued that, even when I was on the board, that those surveys, if they are required, should be specific assessed surveys. So the fee should be specifically assessed to anyone who constructed a dock, and then we need a survey, because why should the whole neighborhood pay for those if they were never built? We would not need the surveys. So that's my stance there with that. So I did see that there's a $9,700 line item for our budget. Assuming that's for surveys. We'll see how that pans out, because we haven't had any meetings.
So Keith has been working on doing a quick claim deed of the tract B property back to the state. And I may not be getting the exact legal way this is in a simplified way. It's being transferred back to them in kind of a deed holding account, and the DEP prepared, actually Keith prepared this quick claim deed that the state wanted, and so they have already approved it. However, hold up, which has been going on for 2 months, it's been on one lawyer's desk at DEP for 2 months, and which I'm annoyed about, and so she hasn't looked at it for 2 months. She said she wants to check it one last time to make sure there's no regulatory issues with this part. Once it gets to DEP, then it's in a place where it can be transferred back to the homeowners association or to the individual homeowner.
Michael Adesi, board member and lake lot owner, just informed the community that portions of this land could be deeded back to individual homeowners after the transaction is complete. Was this their plan? This would make sense now, since the DEP sent no corrective action notices and the HOA was the pursuer.
In closing, our documents have not been amended to permit any docks. It's still, I view that area of Tract B as to be still common area, because that quitclaim deed should be invalid. Alan Wozniak had no right to sign over common area that all of us own. That should have been a vote of the entire membership to approve, and that is why we have a lawsuit. The land of Tract B out into the submerged lands of Lake Thomas need to be returned to our community, to the entire membership, and then I would argue that a state submerged land lease will not be needed. Now, the rest of the issues with our documents not permitting docks, common area that belongs to all of us, we should all have access to, those things still need to be worked out. And hopefully we can have a reasonable board put in place to help see us to a resolution, because this board is not getting it done.